What would you do if your sister collapsed at the exact moment you announced the biggest achievement of your career? And you had a video on your phone predicting it would happen? I'm Mackenzie Evans. I'm 29 years old, and last week I was finally promoted to marketing director at Bradley and Hayes, a position I've been clawing my way toward for the past 5 years. I should have been celebrating that night, but instead I was standing in a fancy private dining room, champagne flute, trembling in my hand while my older sister Amber collapsed into her boyfriend's arms, like something out of a drama series. And the worst part, I knew it would happen. I'd recorded a video 30 minutes before dinner even started detailing exactly what would unfold. But before I explain how that video shattered years of denial in my family, I need to take you back. Because this didn't start at that dinner table. It started long before with two sisters, a quiet favoritism, and an unspoken rule in our household: Amber's pain always comes first. Growing up, Amber and I were close. Despite the 3-year gap, she was my protector, my partner in pranks, and my secret keeper. We shared a bedroom until I was 13, whispering under covers about school crushes and pretending the shadows on the ceiling were secret maps to other worlds. She taught me how to ride a bike. She brought me ice cream after school when she got her driver's license. And when I had my first heartbreak at 16, Amber stayed up all night with me eating cookie dough and crying into episodes of Gilmore Girls. She wasn't just my sister, she was my best friend. But looking back, I see the first signs of imbalance even in our childhood. There was my 9th birthday, for example. I remember it so clearly. I'd begged for a mermaid-themed party, and our backyard was filled with glittery balloons and ocean-colored streamers. Right as I was about to blow out the candles, Amber suddenly screamed that a bee had stung her wrist. The entire party came to a halt. While Mom iced her hand and Dad rummaged through the first aid kit, I sat quietly in front of the cake, alone, trying not to cry. I didn't even realize until years later that it had been the first time I watched a celebration shift around her. Our parents, Linda and Robert Evans, didn't mean to create a divide, but they did. Dad, an engineer, believed in effort and results. To him, I was the model daughter, straight A's debate, team captain, future executive. Mom, a nurse with a bottomless well of empathy, bonded with Amber over her creativity and sensitivity. When Amber began struggling with mysterious chronic pain in college, Mom became her unwavering advocate. Dad, on the other hand, questioned it from day one. And me, I was stuck somewhere in the middle, caught between loyalty and resentment, between guilt and a growing feeling that my milestones came with a silent cost. Amber's diagnosis with fibromyalgia came during her sophomore year of college. The symptoms were debilitating, migrating pain fatigue migraines, brain fog. I believed her. I still believe she suffers. But there's a line between empathy and erasure. And somewhere along the way, my achievements started disappearing into the shadow of her suffering. I tried to ignore the pattern for years. I told myself it was just coincidence when she had to leave my college graduation because of unbearable nerve pain, or when she fainted at my engagement party, cutting the celebration short while I sat in the ER waiting room in my cocktail dress. But the hardest moments weren't always the dramatic ones. Sometimes they were quiet, like the way Mom would speak about Amber's struggle with this breathless urgency, and then glance over at me like I should be doing more, giving more, being more supportive. Meanwhile, Dad would retreat into longer work hours, praising my job promotions without ever acknowledging the tension sitting thick at every family dinner. I didn't have the language for it until I met Dr. Taylor, the therapist I started seeing after my ex-fiancé called off our engagement. He told me bluntly that my inability to set boundaries with my family was emotionally suffocating. That stung, but he wasn't wrong. Dr. Taylor helped me realize I could love my sister and still feel anger, that I could support her condition and still question how the family system was enabling dysfunction. She encouraged me to start documenting it, not to weaponize against Amber, but to validate my own reality, to spot patterns, to regain clarity. So I did. I took quiet notes on every family event, the timing of her symptoms, the reactions, the shift in atmosphere. I noted how my mother would slip effortlessly into caretaker mode, and how I'd become background noise at my own celebrations. Then 6 weeks ago, everything changed. We landed the Meridian Hotel's rebranding campaign, a huge win for our agency. I led the strategy from start to finish. Sleepless nights, 7-day work weeks, 3 failed versions of the slogan before the client finally leaned forward and said, "This is exactly what we've been looking for." That moment, it was magic. It was mine. And when my managing director called me in and offered me the promotion I dreamed of, marketing director at 29, I couldn't wait to share it with my family, to celebrate. But a quiet voice in my head whispered, "Don't you dare expect this night to be just about you." And that's when I made the decision. I planned a beautiful dinner at Preston's, the same restaurant where we'd celebrated birthdays and graduations when I was a kid. I designed the whole evening down to the champagne and flower arrangements, and 30 minutes before anyone arrived, I recorded the video. The restaurant looked perfect. Preston's had always been our go-to spot for life's big milestones: my parents' anniversary, Amber's high school graduation, even the dinner where I first told them about landing my job at Bradley and Hayes. It was upscale but warm with soft lighting, thick cream linens and floor-to-ceiling windows that glowed gold in the early evening light. I arrived an hour early, not because I was nervous, okay, maybe a little, but mostly because I wanted to check everything. I reviewed the private room setup, made sure the cake had arrived white chocolate raspberry with our agency logo, and congratulations marketing director scripted in perfect cursive, and gave final notes to the staff about seating arrangements and timing. Everything was flawless, at least for now. At exactly 6:30 p.m., I slipped into the host chair at the head of the table, opened my phone, and pressed record. It's Friday, October 15th. I'm Mackenzie Evans. In 30 minutes, my family will arrive to celebrate my promotion to marketing director. And based on every past celebration, I predict my sister Amber will experience a health episode likely during or just before I make my announcement. I paused, my voice steady but tight. This isn't an attack. I know Amber lives with chronic pain. I'm not denying her condition. But the timing, it's always the timing. Graduation promotions my engagement. Every moment that's supposed to be about me becomes about her. I don't think it's intentional, but I need to say this out loud somewhere, so that if when it happens again, I won't feel crazy for noticing the pattern. I hit stop, saved it, slipped the phone into my purse, and tried to breathe. My parents arrived first, as they always did. Dad wore his usual suit loafers, polished tie, a little crooked but determined. Mom had curled her hair and wore a navy dress I hadn't seen in years. She hugged me tight, whispering, "We're so proud of you, sweetheart." But even in that moment, I caught her glancing at the door, looking for Amber. They handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a Mont Blanc pen engraved with my initials and title. "You'll sign a lot of big contracts with that," Dad said, clearly proud. And for a moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time with him seen. Then Aunt Grace burst in like a human confetti cannon, smelling of Chanel No. 5 and spouting compliments loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. "Marketing director at 29. Robert, your daughter's a rocket ship. Are you investing early before she goes public?" Mom winced at the volume. I just laughed. That was Grace, no filter, big heart, and always a little too honest. Next came Rachel, my cousin, my quiet anchor. She slid into the room with a soft smile, hugged me longer than necessary, and whispered, "I've got your back tonight." I didn't need to ask what she meant. At 7:15 p.m., 15 minutes late, Amber arrived. She leaned on Michael's arm as she stepped inside, elegantly dressed, face pale but eyes alert. "Sorry, we're late," she said, pulling me in for a careful hug. Traffic was awful. "You look beautiful," I said, meaning it. "Thanks to Michael, I couldn't even lift my arms today," she added with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. And just like that, the pattern began, a subtle claim to the room's emotional tone. A warning flare invisible to everyone except me, and from the glance Rachel gave me, maybe her too. The meal started pleasantly enough. Appetizers arrived: crab cakes, prosciutto-wrapped asparagus, tomato bruschetta. The wine flowed. Dad ordered his usual Scotch neat. Mom sipped white wine and smiled too tightly. For a moment, it felt normal. Dad even gave a toast bragging about both his daughters calling Amber an artistic soul and me a business machine. It was the closest I'd ever seen him come to emotional vulnerability in public. And then Aunt Grace, never one for subtlety, turned to me and said, "So, any plans for a wedding? Don't let Brian drag his feet too long. You don't want to be giving birth in heels at 40, Grace Mom said sharply. That's not appropriate. I gave a diplomatic answer, deflecting gracefully, and Rachel mercifully steered the conversation toward TV shows and restaurants. But I kept watching Amber. She pushed food around on her plate, sipped water, but skipped wine. Michael checked on her quietly every few minutes, touching her wrist, whispering. She kept saying she was fine, but I could feel the shift, like clouds rolling in behind a sunny sky. Dessert was coming, and with it, the announcement. At 8:20 p.m., I stood, raised my champagne flute. I just want to thank all of you for being here tonight. This promotion means more to me than just a title. It's a symbol of every late night, every risk I took, every time I doubted myself and kept going anyway. I took a breath, and I'm so happy to finally say, that's when it happened. Amber gasped, loud, the kind of gasp that made every head at the table whip around. Then she slumped forward into Michael's arms, her glass falling and shattering on the floor. Her body went limp, eyes closed, face pale. Mom screamed. Dad stood up, reaching for his phone. Should I call 911? Michael calmly lowered her into a seated position. I think it's a vasovagal response, he said. Triggered by pain and stress. It's happened before. The room dissolved into chaos, again. And I just stood there, champagne flute still raised, half smiling like a glitching statue, because I'd seen this exact moment coming. Because 30 minutes earlier, I'd literally spoken it into a camera. The silence that followed Amber's collapse wasn't really silent at all. It was filled with gasps, with the tinkle of broken glass being swept off the floor, with Mom's panicked voice, "Amber, sweetie, can you hear me?" with Michael murmuring something about her blood pressure and pain thresholds. And then there was me, still standing, still holding a champagne flute meant for a toast that would never be heard, still watching the moment I'd feared and predicted unfold with eerie precision. Rachel stood up first, quietly grabbing a napkin and dabbing Amber's forehead with cool water. Aunt Grace muttered something about low blood sugar and began fanning her with a menu. Dad hovered over the table phone in hand, unsure whether to call an ambulance or follow Michael's instructions. Amber groaned softly, her head drooping against Michael's shoulder. Mom was already crying. I sat down slowly. My fingers were shaking, not with fear, but with something else. Recognition. This was exactly what I'd recorded in my video. Almost word for word, the timing, the expressions, the shift in energy. It was happening again, and this time I couldn't swallow it. I reached into my purse. My fingers found my phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. "Mackenzie, what are you doing?" Rachel whispered. But I'd already opened the video. "I want to say something," I announced, my voice low but deliberate. Michael looked up sharply. Mom paused, hand still wrapped around Amber's wrist. Dad's eyes flicked to me with a mix of confusion and dread. "I recorded something before tonight's dinner," I said, "and I think you should all see it." "No." Mom snapped. "This isn't the time your sister just fainted." "She didn't faint." Michael said, calm but firm. "Her pulse is steady. It's a flare-up, but she's conscious now." Amber blinked slowly, looking from him to me. "Please," I said. "Just watch." I hit play. There I was on screen, seated at that same dining table 30 minutes earlier, hair still perfect, lipstick, untouched, voice steady. It's Friday, October 15th. In 30 minutes, my family will arrive to celebrate my promotion to marketing director at Bradley and Hayes. And based on every past celebration, I predict Amber will have a health crisis, likely when I announce my promotion. A collective inhale. I'm not saying her pain isn't real. I know she has fibromyalgia. I'm saying the timing always aligns with moments that are supposed to be mine. I stopped the video. The room was utterly still. Amber's lips parted, but no sound came out. Only telling the truth. The rest of that dinner is a blur. Amber asked to step outside for air. Michael helped her up his hand protectively on her back as she walked stiff but upright out of the room. Mom followed, of course, tossing one last furious look over her shoulder at me. I hope it was worth it, she said, low, biting. You've shattered this family for a promotion. That line hit harder than I expected, like everything I'd worked for had been tainted with guilt. Dad stood halfway between me and the door torn. But then he looked at me, really looked, and said, "We'll talk later," before disappearing after Mom. And just like that, the room emptied, except for Brian, Rachel, and Aunt Grace. The cake I'd spent hours designing still sat in the kitchen. The champagne was flat. My moment, once brimming with pride and sparkle, was buried under years of suppressed pain and unanswered questions. "I don't know what just happened," I said finally. "You broke the silence," Rachel replied. "That always feels messy at first." Brian came to sit beside me, his hand slipping into mine. "You didn't destroy anything, Mac. You revealed something that was already broken." That's when my phone buzzed. Amber. I hesitated before looking. My chest tightened. I didn't know what I expected: anger, deflection, silence. But instead, there were just a few words. I watched the video. "You were right about more than you know. We need to talk. Just not tonight. I'm sorry for ruining your celebration again." I stared at the message, heart pounding. It wasn't much, but it wasn't nothing. Aunt Grace noticed my expression. She reached out, didn't she? I nodded. "She'll come around," she said. "Amber's smart, and this time she felt it play out in real time. She'll reflect." That night, I boxed up the cake, ironic as it felt, and took it home. Brian made me tea. We sat on the couch in silence, the only sound the hum of city traffic from outside. I clutched the untouched box of celebration cake on my lap like it was a life raft. "Did I do the right thing?" I whispered. Brian didn't answer right away. When he did, it wasn't a yes or no. There wasn't a perfect move, he said, but there was an honest one. And that's what you did. You chose truth. That matters. I slept fitfully that night, my brain rehashing every second, every word, every reaction. My therapist, Dr. Taylor, once told me that family systems resist change, like a body rejects a foreign object, that the first step toward healing is always disruption. Well, I definitely disrupted. The next day, Dad called. "I just wanted to check in," he said awkwardly. "Make sure you're okay." I told him I was more or less. He hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about the video, about the pattern. Maybe I haven't been as oblivious as I've pretended. That caught me off guard. You saw it, I think I felt it," he said, "but I didn't want to make waves. Your mother." She wrapped her identity around taking care of Amber, and I guess I wrapped mine around avoiding conflict. I didn't know what to say. For once, he was being fully honest. "She still thinks you were cruel," he said gently. "But I'm starting to think you were brave. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something." Days passed. Mom didn't call. No updates, no apology, just silence. And then a week later, Amber texted again. "Can we meet just us?" Riverside Park. I was already walking toward the park before I even texted back, yes. The air was crisp, fall leaves swirling across the pavement. I spotted her near the big bench by the river, the one we used to sit on as kids after bike rides. No makeup, jeans and a hoodie, hair tied back. She looked tired, but more herself than she had in years. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." We sat in silence for a moment, just listening to the river and the distant sound of a dog barking. "I'm sorry," she said first. "Not just for dinner. For all of it. For years." My throat tightened. "Amber, no. Let me say this," she interrupted, voice trembling. "When I got sick, I lost everything I thought I'd be. I went from top of my art program to a girl who couldn't hold a pencil some days, and everyone looked at me like I was fragile, like I was glass. But I needed to be important, needed to matter. I swallowed the lump rising in my chest. So, yeah, she continued. I didn't fake anything. The pain is real. But the timing, I've started to wonder if that wasn't entirely coincidence. I just nodded. Let her talk. When you played that video, I wanted to scream, but then I watched it again, and it was like seeing my own reflection. One I didn't want to admit existed. Amber. I said again, but this time she reached out, took my hand. I want my sister back, she said. Not the one who walks on eggshells around me. The real you. The one who used to prank me with fake spiders and snuck me cookies after curfew. I laughed. A real laugh. I want that too, I said. Then let's start over, she whispered. I've already talked to my therapist about joint sessions, if you're willing. Absolutely, I said. For the first time in years, I felt hope. Not perfection, not resolution, but hope. That maybe, just maybe this rupture could lead to something stronger, something real. Amber and I didn't fix everything that afternoon on the bench, but we cracked open a door that had been sealed shut for years. And sometimes all it takes is one honest conversation to change the direction of a relationship. 3 days later, we had our first joint therapy session virtually over Zoom. Amber's therapist, a calm woman with a melodic voice named Dr. Lisa Morton, facilitated. It was awkward at first. We danced around words, apologized too quickly, tried to cover decades of tension in neat sound bites. But then Amber said something that stopped me cold. I hated becoming the sick one, but I didn't know who I was without it. I saw her differently in that moment, not as someone who had stolen my spotlight, but as someone who had lost her own. We kept meeting weekly. Some sessions were warm, others were brutal. We cried, we laughed. Sometimes we just sat in silence. And then Amber said she was ready to ask our parents to join. Dad agreed almost immediately. I think it's overdue, he said. Mom resisted. She accused me again of trying to paint your sister as a manipulator, but Amber called her out. No, Mom. Mackenzie didn't paint me as anything. I watched the video, I saw myself, and I need to talk about it. That finally got through. And so for the first time in our family's history, all 4 of us sat in a Zoom box together with Dr. Morton, gently guiding us through decades of unspoken pain. The early sessions were tense. Mom was defensive. Dad was stoic. Amber was emotionally raw. And I felt like I was balancing on a wire between peace and vindication. Then came the session that shifted everything. Dr. Morton asked a deceptively simple question. What roles did each of you fall into after Amber's diagnosis? We were quiet for a long time. Then Dad said, I became the avoider. Amber whispered, I became the center. I said, I became the background. And Mom. She didn't speak at first. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Then she said, I became the protector. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that both my daughters needed protecting. None of us spoke after that, because sometimes silence isn't avoidance. Sometimes it's reverence for truth. That was the turning point. From there, we began rebuilding. We established ground rules for family gatherings. If Amber had a flare-up, she would communicate it directly without dramatics. Mom agreed not to spring into medical crisis mode unless Amber explicitly asked. Dad committed to staying emotionally present, and I vowed to speak up kindly if I ever felt the dynamics slipping back into old patterns. We didn't always get it right, but we were trying. Work became a refuge during this time. As marketing director, I was now managing a team of 12. I led client pitches, oversaw brand development strategies, and became a mentor to junior staff. The Meridian campaign was submitted for 2 national awards. One of my interns, Layla, pulled me aside and said, I've never worked under a woman leader who actually listens. Thank you. That moment meant more than any accolade. At home, Brian and I found a new rhythm. He didn't ask for updates every day, but he was always ready when I needed to talk. And when I didn't, he just held my hand and let me breathe. Then came the real test. 6 months after the infamous Preston's dinner, we planned another one. Smaller. Just me, Amber, Mom, Dad. A quiet Italian place on the west side. No speeches, no champagne, no expectations. Just family, trying again. We got through appetizers without incident. Amber smiled, chatted about a book club she'd joined. Dad told an old college story. Mom complimented the server's earrings. Then midway through dessert, Amber winced. Her hands were trembling slightly, her shoulders tensed, the kind of signs that in the past would have signaled an imminent event. But instead of fainting or falling silent, Amber picked up her fork, set it down, and said, "I'm having a flare-up. It's manageable. I just need a minute. And maybe a little cream for the coffee, my mouth's dry. That's all. No theatrics, no derailment. Just a moment, not ignored but not made into the evening's centerpiece either." Dad passed the cream. Mom offered a gentle smile. "Do you need Tylenol?" Amber shook her head. "Not yet, but thank you." And we continued the conversation. I don't remember what we talked about next, probably something mundane, but I do remember the feeling in my chest, relief, like a held breath, finally exhaled after years of waiting. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As Brian and I walked home that night through the quiet streets, he asked, "What are you thinking about?" I said, "Success." He laughed. "You just ooze branding, you know that." "No," I said, smiling. "I mean real success. For years I thought it was titles, awards, paychecks, but tonight I think it might be something else. Like breaking a cycle, speaking the truth, healing even when it's messy." He reached for my hand. "That sounds like success worth chasing," he said. And for the first time in a long, long time, I agreed. A year after that first therapy session, I sat at my desk on a rainy Thursday morning, holding a pen above a blank sheet of paper. It was the first time I'd written a letter by hand in, I don't even know how long. Not a brand brief, not a campaign outline, just a letter. To my mother. It wasn't for confrontation. It wasn't to dig up the past. It was to do something I hadn't fully understood I needed until that morning. To forgive, not forget, not excuse, but release. So I wrote, "Dear Mom, I used to think I needed an apology before I could move on. But now I realize I needed understanding my own, not just yours. You loved me. I know that now. But somewhere along the way, you started loving me less loudly than you loved Amber, and I let that quiet me. I resented her. I resented you. But mostly, I resented myself for staying small, for not speaking up. This letter isn't an indictment. It's a marker, a boundary, a beginning. I hope we can walk forward from here with honesty, grace, and a little more noise from me. I didn't mail it. I folded it into my journal tucked behind a photograph of Amber and me at Dad's birthday a few weeks ago, her eyes bright. No tension in her shoulders, both of us holding slices of cake and laughing. Healing doesn't come with a dramatic crescendo. It's not like the movies where one apology fixes everything. It's slow, messy, circular. Some weeks I feel peace. Other weeks I flinch when Amber calls, afraid she'll slip back into the gravity well of needing attention. But more and more, she doesn't. She's been journaling, taking workshops. She even hosted her own birthday this year, a brunch with no fanfare, no drama, no surprise ailments. And for the first time in memory, Mom let me make the toast. She just smiled, no interruptions, no shifting focus. To both my daughters, she said later, "Who teach me things every day, especially the things I didn't want to learn." That was the closest thing to an apology I ever got from her. And it was enough. The most surprising part, my promotion to VP came 3 months later. It made headlines in local business journals. There was a fancy luncheon and media buzz. But that wasn't the moment that made me cry. It was a voicemail from Amber the night before, "Hey, Mac. Just wanted to say I'm proud of you, not just for the title, for the woman you've become, and I'm sorry for the times I dimmed your shine. You deserve the spotlight always." I sat on my living room floor with that voicemail on repeat, and I wept, not from pain, but from release, letting go of old stories, of invisibility, of competition disguised as compassion, of family dynamics that made me the dependable one, the strong one, the quiet achiever. I'm not quiet anymore, not angry either, just clear. Amber and I aren't best friends, but we're real with each other now. That's enough. Mom still struggles. She overcorrects sometimes, still flinches when we bring up therapy, but she listens more. Dad. He's softening, more present. He even started sending Sunday morning texts, "Proud of you, Mac." And I've learned to own the spotlight without apology, to love without disappearing, to celebrate myself, even if no one claps. Because healing isn't just about them changing, it's about me choosing to stand, to speak, to stay in the room even when it shakes. If you've ever felt like the background character in your own family, I see you. If you've ever swallowed your success to keep the peace, I hear you. And if you've ever wondered whether it's okay to take up space, let this be your sign you were never too much. You were just in the wrong room. Drop a comment below if this story hit home. And if you've ever had to rebuild your place in your family, I'd love to hear how you did it. And if you stayed till the end, you're the kind of soul this channel was made for. This was Mackenzie Evans. And this time, the story was mine to tell.